Throughout this semester, I have had the opportunity to be researching James Madison and his political views throughout his political career. It's often argued that Madison's political views were contradictory throughout his career. We see evidence for that in his shift from supporting the Federalist Party, more so before the Revolutionary War, to the Democratic Republican Party, more so after the war. Even though this is the case, and we see this clear shift from federalism to democratic republicanism, it seems that throughout Madison's political career, he remains consistent to his value system. There's a lot of values that are shared between both parties, and really that are shared with an American identity that Madison embodies throughout his political career. It could be argued that a lot of the values are held today in our modern two party system of Democrats and Republicans. However, the political parties that existed at the start of our nation were a lot more closely aligned than we have today. The political polarization that we see today has greatly divided our two party system. Before that existed, there's a lot of similarities between the two parties, and there was a lot of ability to compromise between the two systems. So it seems through my research that Madison was not necessarily contradicting himself, but rather he was remaining consistent to a value system that he held throughout his political career. I was able to look at a variety of primary sources that help to show this. One of the early primary sources I found was an address that James Madison gave at William and Mary College at the anniversary of the college's founding. He said, "The same motives which induced man to alienate those precarious rights which a state of nature afforded would also prompt him to secure his entrance into society had left unimpaired." Now, those two values are coming very prevalently from that quote, both the value of freedom and the value of security. A lot of times, those two can seem contradictory. If we want a secure nation, sometimes we have to limit the freedom of what other people can do. Or to promote freedom, there's a danger that comes with that, there's a risk that comes with that. However, those are two values that the American identity has widely embraced throughout America's history, and Madison is holding both of those values in tension, and he is able to do that well. The second quote I have here is from the Articles of Confederation, which James Madison was very influential in forming. He articulated this in the Articles of Confederation when he was more so aligned with the Federalist Party, the party that was more so advocating for order than necessarily protecting the freedom and rights of average everyday citizens. But even then, Madison said, each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence. Now, state rights and then individual rights and individual freedom and independence for every citizen are still values that Madison is holding to, even though he's part of the Federalist Party. The final piece that I have here is James Madison's Federalist Number 10 from the Federalist Papers that he wrote. It just articulates more values that Madison is holding and consistent to throughout his political career. This quote says, "It could not be less folly to abolish liberty, which is essential to political life, because it nourishes faction or division, than it would be to wish the annihilation of air, which is essential to animal life, because it imparts to fire its destructive agency." So essentially, what Madison is saying here is because freedom, there is risk with that. If we are to eliminate freedom just because there's a lot of risk, that would be like eliminating oxygen for human life to be sustained just because oxygen is needed for fire, which is destructive. He is writing this as he is shifting to a more democratic Republican view of his political career. He is advocating for liberty, but he's not saying that security should just be done away with. Really, he is gravitating towards a value that he still holds to consistently when he is advocating against faction, which is to be valuing unity. These values of freedom, independence, unity, and order are consistent throughout Madison's political career, whether he is more aligned with the Federalist Party or the Democratic Republicans. So to say that his political career is overshadowed by contradictions would not be justified, but rather he is remaining consistent to a value system that the American majority can identify with.